Good morning. Welcome to the 2018 National Book Festival. We're so glad to see you here today. My name is Becky Brazington Clark, and I'm the Director of Publishing at the Library of Congress. Before we get started, we want to take a moment to ask you to silence the device of your choice, whether it's your watch or your phone or your iPad, anything that makes a noise, just take a second and flip it to whatever mode makes it stop. That would be great. You're going to have a fantastic day today. You're going to have the opportunity to hear from some of the authors of your favorite books or books that you don't know are going to become your favorite books. And it's just a pleasure to open the genre fiction stage this morning with Brad Meltzer. But speaking of favorite books, did you know that the Library of Congress is partnering with PBS to promote the Great American Read? This multi-platform outreach campaign is designed to get the country reading and talking about books. Don't miss the fall kickoff with Meredith Vieira, premiering Tuesday, September 11th on PBS stations nationwide. And make sure to visit the Great American Read website on pbs.gov before October 18th so you can cast your vote for America's best-loved book. Now, Brad Meltzer is certainly one of America's most popular, successful, and multifaceted contemporary authors. He's not only written 11 best-selling thrillers, but he's also found great success as an author of nonfiction books, advice books, children's books, and comic books. But don't let Brad's incredible success make you feel inadequate. He has a wonderful quote on his website that speaks both to his humility and his humanity. And it reads, "We are all ordinary. We are all boring. We are all spectacular. We are all shy. We are all bold. We are all heroes. We are all helpless. It just depends on the day." Please join me in extending a warm welcome to best-selling author and super nice person, Brad Meltzer.
So let me identify this crowd right now. If you are here, you have chosen to come here as opposed to go see Dave Eggers, as opposed to go see John le Carré, as opposed to see Annie Proulx. I mean, what are you doing here, right? Plus, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. These are the diehards, right? Afterwards, it's people who are like bored in the city and it maybe rains and they come in. This is the best crowd in the world as far as I'm concerned. This is it, right? And I want to recognize one person who couldn't be here today. I have a high school friend who lives in Washington, D.C., and my friend Jamie Axelrod. And Jamie and I went to high school together. We met we were in ninth grade. I had hair. One of my oldest friends in the whole world. She was in our wedding party. And she is right now sitting in Dave Eggers' room. And so her husband and daughters are here, and I just publicly want to embarrass her. And so thank you for letting me do that. And I told her, you have to go. It's Dave Eggers, go. And she did. And I was like, what are you going for? And that's Jewish guilt, by the way, that I just did on like another level, right? And that Jewish joke does not work in Ohio like it does here. I'm just telling you. So I want to tell you a little bit about how I got here, truly got here today, because this is really my life. We were honoring First Lady Barbara Bush 2 days ago in Kennebunkport. And we got to Kennebunkport, my wife and I, we got to go and honor this amazing woman who has given so much to literacy and has become a dear friend of mine over the years and a reader of mine, and just one of the really, just gave her whole life, post-White House and in the White House, to that most amazing art of all, right? To unleash the most powerful thing of all, books and ideas. An honor to go do that. And we were there with David Rubenstein and with Cokie Roberts, and we did this great thing. And then we knew we were coming here, and this is where I want to mention and make my biggest thank you, is we knew we were coming to the Library of Congress and to the National Book Festival. And so I was like, I know, it was like asking kind of like an Uber when you ask David Rubenstein, can I come on your private plane? And he was just like an Uber, was like, sure, jump in. And so we flew here on the private jet, which is always how I fly. All authors, we always fly like that. And we get here, we're just having this amazing day. When we were in Kennebunkport, I got to read my new book to former President George H.W. Bush, one of the most amazing, rewarding experiences of my life. We fly in the private jet, we land in Washington, we go to our friend's house, and we're staying with them, and it's like 1 a.m. at this point because we're catching up the whole day and telling them about everything that happened. And we go downstairs to their basement, Virginia, in the little room in the basement, and the toilet's broken. And at 1 a.m, my wife and I have our hands in the toilet because you can't wake up your friends and tell them that their toilet's broken. You got to fix it yourself. And I realized this is my life. This is the perfect metaphor for everything I am. I am proud here. And I mentioned Mr. Rubenstein, and I have to say a thank you to him for hosting us here today. And more important, thank you to the Library of Congress and to all of our friends, to the librarian, Carla Hayden, to my friend Sarah Duke, and all the heart. Look, you see just so many people in those blue shirts today. Please thank them when you see them. It takes so much hard work to put them on. So let's hear it for everyone from the Library of Congress. And what I want to talk about is of course, this book, The Escape Artist. And The Escape Artist for me this is my 20th year of writing books. 20 years. If you were there from the start and you read The 10th Justice when it came out, you are old. You are an old person. And if you're laughing, you are old. And for me, this book, at 20 years, I know how to do a thriller, right? If you give me the plot, and I got the first chapter, I know at this point, I've done enough of these books that I know how to build the boat as I'm sailing the boat. I'll figure it out as I go. But I was like, it's 20 years. And the question is not just can you do it again, but can you get better? How do you get better 20 years into something? And you don't really even have, I was like, listen, I can just write the book. I know how to do it. I'm going to do it again. But I was like, don't do it. And I took a hard look because I knew the 20th anniversary was coming. It was like my own little midlife crisis. And I said, take a look at the other books and which were the ones that actually were the best ones. And every time I come out with a book, I do think it's the best one I've ever written. Why would I put it out if I didn't? But you have to have some humility and realize they can't all be the very best one. Right? You can look at your work and say, all of them are great, or you can, again, have a little bit of a soul and realize I can get better. And I took this hard look at myself and realized that the books that I identified as the best ones, for me, were those ones that had that character. That character. So I was like, don't start the book until you fully have these characters. Forget the plot. You're getting too heavy on plot. Let's just try and find the characters. And the truth is, this book started when I was with the USO. Every year, for a while, now they skip a couple years, but the USO brings 6 thriller writers to go to the Middle East to entertain our troops. And the best part of it is they bring the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, they bring the MMA fighters, and my friend was like, can you tape the audible sigh when you walk in the room? And they realized that and this is truly after the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, that Brad and the literary people walk in. And that was how it was. It was literally the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders and then us. And I thought it was going to be a disaster. But what I loved is, obviously, listen, they love the country singers. That's who gets the big crowds. But there's all the people, and they're smaller, come up afterwards and they say, listen, we love when, the country singer comes, and we love the cheerleaders too, but I'm a reader, and you're the first person who's here for me. And that's how you find your fellow nerds, right? That's how you know your people. It's people who come at 10 in the morning and come to this room, right? Let's be friends. Like, immediately, anyone who comes out today, you appreciate, has this love of books that you have. And so I'm there, and I found out when I was in the Middle East, when I was in Kuwait, about this place called Dover Air Force Base. And most of us know Dover. We certainly know the images of it. Those flag-covered coffins that come off the planes as our fallen soldiers are laid to rest. I believe John McCain's body, we were looking it up right before here, went through Dover. They do the work on some of the most amazing cases. When the space shuttle went down, the bodies went to Dover. When the Pentagon flight on 9/11 went down, the bodies went to Dover. Dover is also the place where all of our spies across the country, when they die and they're on secret missions, their bodies go too. And no one knows the real names, but the people at Dover do. And that means that Dover is a place that's filled with secrets and mysteries. And I realized right there, this is a place I need to write about. And the honest truth is it was a transaction to me. I've written about the White House and Congress, and I've written about the Supreme Court, even the Library of Congress. And I thought, I'm going to go in, I'm going to meet some really nice people, and we're going to talk, and then I'm going to write my book. And it is at base a transaction. And sometimes you make friends, right? Like my friend Sarah, who has a love of comics here at the Library of Congress. There are people you remember and you know and you talk about. But for the most part, it's a lot of just research and you do the writing. But what I wasn't prepared for is when I got to Dover, how utterly humbled I was. Because when I got there, I saw the work that they put into our fallen soldiers, spending 12 hours to rewire someone's jaw with modeling clay to smooth it out, so a family could get one last good look at their fallen son. Rebuilding someone's hand from scratch because a mother specifically says she wants to hold her son's hand one last time. We are a country right now that is starving for heroes. I realized right there, these are our real heroes. These are the best of us working on the best of us. And I knew I had to write about them. And that's where I've got my main character, Zig. And I had the plot of the book. When I go to, anytime I do research, I go to the people that I meet and I kind of give them the plot. And I said, here's the plot I want. I want to have a body that comes through and has a hidden message on it. And they were telling me there, I figured they've seen enough bodies that come through. I was like, maybe someone had a tattoo or something they found. And I said, but I just want some kind of hidden message. And they said, we got a story. There was one time, if you are on a plane and your plane is going down and you know about it with enough advance notice, depending on your height, you can actually take a sheet of paper, write a note, swallow the note, and when the plane crashes, the liquids in your stomach will actually protect the note. And I'm like, that's the craziest story I've ever heard. I said, but they said, it's not a story. It happened. And I said, what are you talking about? And they explained to me that it really happened. There was a body that came in and the stomach, when they opened it up, had a secret note in it. And my first thought is, of course, who would even think, as your plane is going down, to eat a note? It's like only Batman thinks of that, right? I mean, who? And so it has to be, in my head, someone in the military, of course. But I was also thinking that when you think about that, it made me wonder, of course, who it was. And they wouldn't tell me who it was, and I respect the privacy of that. But what I realized when I look back on that note, what that note is it's looking for what we all look for every day: connection, right? We all want to love and be loved. And I know when my parents passed away, one of the gifts that I got is I got to say goodbye. And that's what that note was. It was someone trying to say goodbye, someone reaching out. And the universe, in that moment when that note was found, saying that when we reach out, we all will be heard. I love that story. And I love what it tells me about the universe. It also guarantees that the next time you're on a plane and you hit turbulence, you are going to think of me, right? Address your notes to me so I know they should come right to me. I want them. I don't want it to be in doubt. I want to know, hey, just write Dear Brad. They'll get it. It'll come to me. Forwarded messages. And you will think about me. You will. I promise you. The moment that plane goes like that, you're like, Meltzer, damn it. And I got the plot. There's the plot. Easy as pie, right? The book opens up. I have Zig, who's my mortician at Dover. And a body comes in. The body is a woman who he used to actually, when she was a little girl, was in Girl Scouts with his daughter. It's this character named Nola. I love my character Nola. She's this mysterious figure. I had this great idea for her. And the body comes inside into Dover. He opens up the stomach, and he sees a secret note inside. And the note says, Nola, you were right. Keep running. And he realizes that this body on the table isn't Nola at all. Nola's not dead. Nola's alive, and she's on the run. She's the escape artist. And I just ruined chapter 1 of the book for you, right? There's chapter 1. But I can start it there. That's it. I know what I'm doing. Give me that. I'll figure out the rest. I can go. I'll call my friends, I'll call Matt, and I'll call other friends, and, when I get to stuck parts, we'll figure it out. But what I did is I said, don't do it. Don't start this book. Learn something after 20 years. Don't start this book until you have Nola. Don't make her up as you go along. It'll be far better when you have the character. And around that time, we were doing a TV show called Lost History, and we were searching for the 9/11 flag. And we were actually here in Virginia filming the very first episode. And it was out at Fort Belvoir in Virginia, and they're giving me a tour of their museum there. They have this beautiful Army museum. And at the museum, they have all this art from the military on the walls, and they have a whole collection, massive collection of all this military art, painted by top military figures, painted in the field. I'm like, why does the government have all this art? They have art by Adolf Hitler. Like, why does the government have all this art? And they explained to me, and this is true, that since World War I, the U.S. government has had an actual painter on staff, a painter who is painting disasters as they happen. So whether it's storming the beaches of Normandy, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's 9/11, the person who got through on 9/11, got through security, was actually our painter, our war painter. And I said, you're telling me that while everyone else is racing in with guns blazing, we have someone who's racing in with nothing but paintbrushes in their pockets? I'm like, that's the craziest person I've ever heard of. I'm like, I gotta meet him. I wanna meet him. And they said to me, you mean you wanna meet her? Her. I was like, yeah, exactly right, yeah. And I knew in that moment, the moment they said the word her, I said, I got Nola. I know who she is now. This woman who races into disaster. And we all know anyone who races into disaster is running from their own disaster in their lives. And a few years ago, when I do a lot of comic books, and I was doing a book called Justice League of America. And if you do a book called Justice League of America, you're the nerdiest person on the earth. And I was doing it, and I was so happy doing it. And I had a dinner with the artist of the book, Gene Ha. He's a beautiful, elegant artist, one of the just best artists in comics as far as I'm concerned. We did this issue together, and he came to Florida where I live, and we went to dinner. And at the end of dinner, he said to me, Brad, when I spend time with you now, I know so much more about you in just seeing you. I'm like, wait, we've been working together for over a year now. What do you mean? And I realized in that moment, he then rattles off all these physical things I do, and not the obvious ones, but all these things that I do that I never realize I'm ever doing. He sees the world as an artist differently than I do. My friend Chip Kidd, the graphic designer who did my first and second book covers, he sees the world as a graphic designer differently than the rest of us do. The rest of us see a big red stop sign, right? We see it every single day. Chip Kidd sees the greatest representation of graphic design ever created, something that could be read in any language by any level of education. Everyone knows what it means. He sees the world differently than we do. And I said, that's what Nola is as an artist. She sees the world differently than we do. Nola sees the way your belt buckle is facing, the little pin on it, so she knows whether you're right-handed or left-handed because of the way you pull it. Nola sees that when you walk past a reflective surface, that you always check your reflection, your vein. Nola sees that you have crow's feet, but only on this eye because you're a hunter and that's your aiming eye. Nola sees what she sees are your weaknesses, and she finds them instantly. And I knew my character right there. I had Zig, this mortician who surrounds himself with death every day, his own disasters in his own life. I had Nola running from disasters every day in her own life. And then I had this detail. In 1898, a man named John Elbert Wilkie was put in charge of the U.S. Secret Service. He was actually a magician. He was a friend of Harry Houdini, and he loved doing magic tricks himself. It is the only time in history that a magician was in control of the Secret Service. I friggin' love that idea, right? I for almost a decade, I was holding on to that nugget. I'm like, I'm using that. That is going somewhere. And I didn't know where to put it, right? You can put it in any book and say, look, I have knowledge. I threw it in my chapter 24. But that's not how a good book is written. You don't just show it, it's not an encyclopedia. It has to make sense thematically. It has to fit into your story. It has to, make the whole story flesh out. And finally, I had it because I found out this, is that Harry Houdini had his own Secret Service. His Secret Service was made up of family and friends. And when Harry Houdini, we all know the great escape artist, would go to town and he would come to, let's say, Washington, D.C., his Secret Service would come here days earlier and they would scout the place. And they would scout the local jails and the local police. They would see what kind of handcuffs they're using, figure out what kind of locks are on the jail cells. And then Harry Houdini would come to town and say, I'm here, lock me up in your jails, put me on your handcuffs, and I will escape them all. How? Because he had the key. Because his Secret Service figured it all out for him. I was like, I need to get my own Secret Service, right? I want one, and it's a great idea. But I also found out this. Harry Houdini was obsessed with death. He never got over the death of his mom One of the cores of who he was exactly that. And we all know that he was the great escape artist. That was half of his act, though. It wasn't his whole act. We all think of, they put him in the water torture and ba-ba, I'm out, ta-da. But that was only half of his act. The other half of his act was he was obsessed with spiritualism. Back then, after World War I, we lost so many young people in the war, so many young men in the war, that there were spiritualists, who what we consider just people who were doing seances and fortune tellers, who were telling people, it sounds so silly now, but it was just rampant back then. It was like another religion. They would say, if you're looking for your son, I can speak to him. He's sending me a message. I have a message for you, and for $5 more, I'll tell you what that message is. And you laugh, but we had Miss Cleo not too long ago, right? In Florida, I say proudly, my home state, naturally. Where else are we going to have Miss Cleo? But Harry Houdini hated that. He hated that those spiritualists were taking advantage of families' love of their fallen sons and daughters. How could you do that? So he used to debunk them, bring them up on stage, figure them out, show them what the frauds they were. But Harry Houdini was so obsessed with it also that he gave all of his Secret Service, but also all of his close family and friends, secret passwords, secret code words, that if they died, they could have a code word in the seance that only you and he would know. So if you came back to life, he would know it's really you. And what I love about that is Harry Houdini's like, I don't believe any of this nonsense. It's all fake. But in case I'm wrong, right? So he gives his friend Matt, here's your secret, here's your code word. You and I know this code word. If you come back after death, you say the code word, I know it's you. No one's pulling my leg. But the word, the secret code word that Harry Houdini supposedly gave to his mother, the woman whose death he never got over, was this simple word: forgive. Forgive. One of the most powerful words in the universe. And I had Zig, again, this mortician surrounded by death who has the holes in his life. I had Nola, this artist who runs into disaster because of the holes in her life. I had Harry Houdini filled with holes in his life that will never be filled. And all of us, every person in this room here today, we all have holes in our lives, different sizes, different shapes, caused by, all different things, whether it's the passing of a loved one, the betrayal of a friend, something that's lost to us, addiction, abuse, whatever it might be. We have holes in our lives. We have holes that we're thrown down into. But we must get out. We have to climb out. And the best way, always, the first step out of that hole, is to forgive, especially to forgive yourself. And that's the escape artist. That's what it was to me. I'll tell you one last thing, and then I love answering questions because that always takes it into different worlds and universes. But when I look back, I could say, okay, what do I learn by that? Now I'm at 20 years, and what do you take back away from that? Do you just say, okay, I got it. I wrote this book and I'm proud of it and here we are, but I have to take something else from it. I'll tell you my magic trick to explain it. And that is, I started writing here in Washington, D.C. This is where I wrote The 10th Justice when I was here. And right before The 10th Justice was published, my first actual book that I ever wrote was a book about college life. It got me 24 rejection letters. There were only 20 publishers. I got 24 rejection letters, right? Which means some people were writing me twice to make sure I got the point. But I can tell you, and I rarely tell this story, but the first 22 rejection letters came quickly. Number 23 and 24 were actually supposed to, we thought, were going to be acceptance letters. My editor had told me that the last two people, 23 and 24, love your book. They really love your first book. And I went to New York and I met with them. I had these big meetings with publishers. It was a big deal to me. And then she said to me, wait by the phone, because it was back in the day when you waited by the phone. And I was living right here in the city and on L Street, and I'm waiting by the phone, and I'm waiting truly for her to tell me. I was in college debt and law school debt at that point to pay off. In so much debt that I'm waiting to pick up the phone and for her to tell me the deal and the offer and the money that we're going to get for this book so I can start paying my debt off. I'm waiting to pick up the phone and tell me the victory we're about to have, that they both love this book so much. And the phone rings, and I picked up the phone, and I'll never forget, she said, sorry, kiddo. And my stomach just bottomed out right there. I was devastated. It was gone. That was 23 and 24. They passed. And to this day, we all have our rituals in our lives. We don't think we do, but we do. Even if it's what you eat for breakfast, we have our rituals. And I'm going to tell you my ritual, my magic trick, is that since that day, every single day that I sit down to write, I recreate that exact moment perfectly in my head. I picture the exact phone I was holding. It was one of those clear see-through ones where you could see the wires running through it. If you're laughing at that, you're old too, right? That was like high tech at the time, right? It's see-through. We'd see how it works, right? On my left, there was a Formica desk that everyone has when they're in college. On my right was a box spring and a mattress, no headboard, just exactly what you have. That was the decor. I picture the terrace that I was looking over, the concrete parking lot, and this fire station that has these 3 doors, 1, 2, 3. I picture in my head and I count them every day, just like I did this morning, 1, 2, 3, and then I close and I say those words to myself. Sorry, kiddo. For 20 years, I've been saying that because I never, ever want to believe I made it. The moment I think I made it, I'm finished. And I always want to be as hungry as I was when I was 24 years old living in this city. I never, ever want to take what I have for granted because the moment I do, I'm done. I always want to be that hungry. I want to sit down every day like I'm a 24-year-old kid in debt, and I want to write this book because it's the only thing that's going to save me if I can tell this story. And for 20 years, I've never missed a working day. Sorry, kiddo. Sorry, kiddo. Sorry, kiddo. I am the escape artist, right? And that's what we all need to be. Not to escape and run away, but all of us have those things in our lives that we've been doing for years and years. Ask yourself, challenge yourself, how do you get better? Look back at who you were and change it up. You will never regret it. And don't beat yourself up for what you do when you get in your ruts. Forgive. Forgive, starting with yourself, and you too will be the escape artist. So that is the book. I'd love to talk more. We'll talk about the kids' books. We'll talk about anything you want to ask about. I see there's microphones here, but you can also raise your hand and yell it out, and I'll repeat the question, I promise. But you can ask about anything. You can ask about the TV shows, the comics, the kids' books. I know there are some people who, I can see kids here, and I love that you've brought your child to hear about the gruesome details of death. You are indeed the greatest parents of all time in the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area. Okay, here comes some first brave souls.
You're almost as good a speaker as you are a writer. Thank you very much for being here.
I appreciate it. That's a good question. You can go sit down now.
I wanted to ask you about your kids' books.
Yes, please.
What's the age that you're targeting?
Yeah, so let's talk about it. So for those who don't know, and thank you for asking that, sir, because it lets me shill like nobody's business. So for those who don't know, I also do kids' books. When my sons and daughter were born, I was just tired of them looking at reality TV show stars and people who were famous for being famous. And I said, you know what, I have so many better heroes that we can give them. And we started with I'm Amelia Earhart, and I am Abraham Lincoln. We did I am Rosa Parks, Albert Einstein, Jackie Robinson, because my son loves sports. And I was like, don't look at this athlete, you know, who all that person does is score a lot of points. That doesn't change the world in any way. Meet Jackie Robinson. This is how you change the world. This is what a leader looks like. We did George Washington. We did Lucille Ball. I did for my daughter because I wanted her to have a female entertainment hero who wasn't just famous for being thin and pretty. That Lucille Ball stood for the idea that it's not just okay to be different, it's spectacular to be different. The only thing that connects us in this room completely, that is true for all of us, is we are all different. It is something that we just frown on today, but it is the most celebrated thing that we should hold up, is our difference. And I love that I Am Lucille Ball stood for that. We did I Am Helen Keller, I Am Dr. King. We did I Am Jane Goodall, also for my daughter because she loves our dog. And I wanted to show her what your love of something can do. Jane Goodall, who used her love of animals to just have breakthroughs in science and make us look and study animals in a way that has changed since. And we did, for my youngest son, who's our creative one, I did I Am Jim Henson. Because when I can tell you, when I was 5 years old watching Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, that they taught me that you could use your creativity to put good into this world. And when we did I Am Jim Henson, that's all I hope I'm doing here today, is using my creativity to try and put good into this world. And I love that we get to do that book. Got to work with Jim Henson's family to put that book out. And we've done Harriet Tubman, we've done Gandhi, which again, we need right now, right? Just think about how much we're slaughtering each other every day. Hating each other. Whatever your side is, you hate the other. And we need to actually find peace. We need to actually be able to calm down and communicate in a peaceful way. That's what inspired Dr. King, and there's a reason. And it actually leads me to the two newest. This one comes out in 11 days. This is I Am Neil Armstrong. And we're going to have This is Democracy. I also brought the one after that, I Am Sonia Sotomayor. So yeah, that's right. Let's see Sonia Sotomayor do this. Wait, she's doing this today? Crap. We actually have the same publisher, and the publisher was like, we're coming out with kids' books about her at the exact same time. And they're like, Brad, can you wait 1 month for her book to come out? And I'm like, no. And then we're like, well, we'll wait. Thank you very much. We're going to have a show of hands. I'm going to read from one of the books. It's either the one, Neil Armstrong, you can raise your hand, not yet, or you raise your hand for Sonia Sotomayor. So are you ready to vote? Are you ready to vote? Yes. Democracy. This is it. We're in Washington, D.C. Raise your hand if you want to hear from Neil Armstrong. Okay, woohoo. Sonia Sotomayor? I knew it. That's why I brought that one. Okay, here we go. And I'll tell you that what the fun of this book is when you have a person who's alive. Like if I screw up Neil Armstrong or George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, they don't care. They're not coming to my house. If you screw up Sonia Sotomayor, there's a scene in here where she gets into a fight in the Bronx. Do not screw up Sonia Sotomayor. But her office was so nice. They were so nice in helping us get this right and embarrassing me with the details that I got wrong, of course. So this is, I'm going to read from one of my favorite parts of the book. And I also, by the way, this book is also the best use of Jewish guilt ever because someone in my family is what we call in Miami a Jubin. It's a Jewish Cuban. So she's Latina, and she's like, if you don't do a book, I'm going to murder you because I have my little Latina niece and nephew. So this is it. It says, in my life, I was the Aji, the hot pepper, the one who wouldn't slow down. Because of where I was from, because I was poor and Latina, some people didn't think I would go far. But there were others who helped my dreams come to life. They gave me opportunities and reminded me to keep going. Those are the people you need to listen to. Pay attention to the ones who believe in you. The more you learn, the farther you'll go. Education is a rocket ship. It can take you anywhere. But no matter how high you fly, never forget where you started. And here's the final page of the book. It says, whether it's in English, Spanish, or any other language, our dreams are often the same. A loving family, kind friends, a safe place to call home, and the chance to reach our potential. The world outside your window is a starting point, but there's so much more beyond that. Read, study, do right by people. No matter where you're born, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. I am Sonia Sotomayor. I am proud that with opportunity comes justice. And there's the end of the book. I just ruined the ending, by the way. That is the first time anyone's heard the book. This is actually like a proof copy. It's not even bound. You can like pull it apart. But I felt like I knew what you were going to vote for. I'm from D.C. I'm like, there's no way they're going to be suckers and take the book they can get in 10 days. Like, this isn't coming out till November. And plus, it's D.C., man. It's Supreme Court. Okay, other questions? Yes? Oh, sorry. I never answered your question. Right. Screw your question. The age. So we are... everyone's buying them as baby gifts now, which is fascinating to me. They're building libraries of real heroes for their kids and their grandkids, their nieces and nephews. But our sweet spot is actually 5 to 9 years old. If your kid's an early reader, it's 4 to 9, but 5 to 9 is our sweet spot. But thanks to everyone who's bought all the baby gifts. It's amazing. I have all these people now who come to me in line, and they'll be pregnant, or they say, my granddaughter's pregnant, and they'll say, you can't tell anyone the name, and they whisper it to me. So I know everyone's baby's first names before like the husbands do. It's fantastic. Yes.
So I'm also a college student, and I want to be a writer, and I'm particularly interested in mysteries and thrillers. So I was wondering if you had any advice for like balancing college life or post-college life and being a writer at the same time.
Yeah, the question is, how do I publish my book, Brad? No, so the question, it's a good question, is after college, if you want to pursue a lifestyle as a writer, what kind of best path, any advice, is that right? And I could tell you, I'll tell you mine. That's the only story I have. And the beautiful part of writing is there are no rules. Everything that anyone tells you about how to write, there's someone who does the exact opposite. There's people who plot their books and do it by outline form. There's people who say, I'm going to see where the day takes me. And both work. It's what works best for you. And so the short answer is you have to find what works best for you. But for me, I couldn't afford to go wait tables and then write my dream novel. I had no money. I had to figure out how to pay for it. So I wound up just getting a job. I worked here in D.C. I worked at a law firm. I was in law school. I worked at night. I just always gave every single night. I would come home from work. I would eat dinner. And my rule was by 8 o'clock, no matter what, I had to be writing. I wrote from 8 to 11 every night. I took off Friday nights always. And then I wrote all day Saturday, all day Sunday, the whole days. And I did that for a year. And that's how you build a novel. A novel is like a sandcastle that you build a grain of sand at a time. You put the first grain down, you got nothing, chapter 1. Second grain down, you got nothing. But you sit there for a year. You write a page every day for a year, you will have a novel by the end. It may not be good, it may not be great, but you're going to have a novel. So keep going, keep going, keep going. The answer is I had 24 people who told me to give it up. It doesn't mean they're right and I was wrong, or I can look back and say, I was right and they were wrong, and haha on them, look what happened. Life is subjective. Keep going. Don't let anyone tell you no. Just keep going. And I can't wait till you're up here and we get to cheer for you. Yes, sir.
What's your writing process like? Do you do it in the mornings? Do you work at a desk?
Yeah, in terms of process, for me, I treat it like a job. I think I write better at night, but I have kids and I don't want to miss them. So I'm usually sitting down by 9:30, futzing around on the internet. And then I tend to be, by 10 at least, try to be writing. I write straight through until 2:30. I don't take lunch until 2:30 because the moment I take lunch, I just get tired and I kind of lose it. So I want to just starve myself into, going as long as I can and getting that long block of writing. And then sometimes I can come back. When I was in my 20s, I would aim for 8 pages a day. When I was in my 30s, I aimed for about 6 pages a day. When I hit my 40s, I was like, 4 pages a day will be awesome. And now I'm like, I'm writing the best 2 pages every day that anyone has ever seen, or if I can. The truth is and then I sit down and where I read what I wrote the day before, and then I take off from there and then start writing again. And I can see my friend Hank is nodding. I'm sure many of us do the same.
Great, thanks. I like your haircut, by the way.
I was going to say, I like yours. Tip your barber.
Hi, Brad Meltzer. My question is, I discovered you in middle school through your TED Talks. Well, actually through the History Channel, and then also through your TED Talks. And you mentioned in your TED Talks, anyone can enjoy history. The person you mentioned, if you do like a lemonade stand, that person can make history. And so the idea of, I love history too, so the idea of constantly loving history and embracing yourself in it is so simple, but also some students hate history. So how do you balance the fact that history can be amazing, but it's also kind of hard and complex?
Yeah, no, great question, because I would fail those students who hate history. But the real answer is anyone who hates history just hasn't found the story they love. It's like a good book. When people say, I don't like to read it, it's like, no, you just haven't found your story. Let's find it together. My friend John Meacham yesterday said this beautiful idea about history. He said, history is how we learn so much about ourselves, but not by looking down on it and hating it, and not by looking up at it and thinking that it's perfect in every way, some kind of concrete statue that we must admire and revere. The best way to look at history is dead in the eye, right? And that's what it is. To me, you show me that kid who doesn't like it, and let's find out the story that they love. Tell me their story, and I'll tell you who their hero will be, right? You tell me who you are, and when you were a kid, and I'll tell you who you are today. You tell me who you want to be, and I'll tell you who your hero is. And you just got to find the right story for them. So don't give up on them. Stick with them.
Thank you.
And if they continue that way, totally give up on them. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, let's get to, we got a couple more minutes, but I want to get these last 2 questions. Yes?
Who do you read for pleasure and why?
Yeah, who do I read for pleasure? Sometimes my favorite author is actually this guy named Brad Meltzer. And sometimes I just put on his TV show and I sit with his books and I go, oh, Meltzer, you've done it again. The reality is, and the funny part is that's true. I do that. They gave me our TV show is called, it's not even Lost History, it's called Brad Meltzer's Lost History. It's called Brad Meltzer's Decoded. right? Those are the greatest titles of all time. I said to my wife the other day, I'm like, honey, what are we having for Brad Meltzer's dinner tonight? Because yesterday we had Brad Meltzer's chicken, and tonight I'd like to have Brad Meltzer's pasta. And she was like, you can go sleep on Brad Meltzer's couch. And that's not even a joke. So I can tell you that for me, what do I read? I read a lot of nonfiction just because of the nature of work now, and I absorb it. I mean, I'm trying to think right now, okay, what were the last books that I've been reading? And they were, I can't say who it is because we don't have the clearance on them yet, but they were the biographies of the hero that we're doing at the end of 2019, just consuming them. On the fiction side, I don't read thrillers anymore. I almost never read thrillers because all I'm doing is taking them apart. I'm like a mechanic in a rental car. I'm just trying to figure out what's wrong with it, right? And it's ruining the ride for me. And, even when I watch a movie, if it's a thriller in any way, I was watching the movie Looper, which is a great movie, Rian Johnson's Looper, and I'm sitting there with my wife, and we're like a half hour into it, and I'm like, I got it. And she's like, do not ruin this ending for me. Do not ruin this ending. And the movie finishes, and she turns to me, she's like, were you right? And I go, my way is so much better. And that's all I do in a thriller, is I'm just trying to figure out the tricks. I enjoy it for about 50 pages to 100 pages, and then I'm just taking it apart. But what I do read nonstop and what I have in my bag right now are comic books. That's what I'm always reading, whether it's Brian Michael Bendis or Jason Aaron or Neil Gaiman or anyone else that's out there. That's what I consume on truly almost a daily basis. And for me, it's what I love. And again, I think, local writer Tom King is doing the best Batman stories that we've seen in a decade. And they're still amazing because they're not about fighting crime or anything else, but they're about that great thing that every book has, or at least that I think is a good book, but they say something about us, right? That idea that Batman is Batman because of the death of his parents. And every day that Batman goes out to fight, he knows he's going to fail. He knows he's going out to stop crime. He's got to stop crime, but he's always going to fail. He's never going to stop crime. There's going to be another crime tomorrow. And every day he goes out, he knows he's going to fail, but the next day he's got to try and do it again. Or Superman, to me, the most important part of the story is not Superman. The most important part of the story is Clark Kent, because we're all Clark Kent. We all know what it's like to be boring and ordinary and wish we could do something incredibly beyond ourselves. Those are the stories I love, and that's what I read. Okay, she's telling me 2 minutes, and we got last question. We're going to land the plane on time.
What are your taboos, if any? What would you never write about?
What would I never write about? I mean, gosh, wow. I want to give you a real answer. Yeah, run it on up. We'll do it quick. What would I never write about? Nothing. I'm just that much of a. To me, there's nothing that couldn't. I think that the only thing I won't write about is something I don't care about. As long as I care about it, I'll write about it, and I feel like it can bring us. To me, I have to have that. The X factor in every book is: does the writer love what they're doing? And if they do, it will show on the page. Yeah. Last question. This better be good. The whole room is waiting on you.
In reference to
no pressure. Just make sure this is the best
question.
New book, yes.
Where did you acquire the knowledge to write realistically from a perspective of a woman?
Good question. No, question is you have one of the two main characters of the book are Zig and Nola. And where did you get the perspective of a woman to try and write that? And obviously, it is hard. The first time I ever wrote a woman protagonist, I had her go into the bathroom, and she was going into court, and she was all nervous, so she splashed water on her face, and then she goes back into the thing. All the women are laughing now, right? And my wife said, you clearly have never worn makeup. And don't even ask when I had to write the scene and how to figure out how women, what they do with pantyhose when they go to the bathroom, right? Like, I had no idea. Like, it was a foreign language to me. What I do is I rely on my wife, and I rely on Sergeant Amy Brown was really helpful for this book. And she's the actual, not current, just finished, artist in residence for the military and for the Army. And she told me her life story. And her life story is obviously very different than the story I made up, but it was her perspective that I felt like kept me right. She was my true north, and I wrote toward her. And it's hard, right? Because I didn't live that. I didn't have that experience. I'm trying my best. Okay, with that said, as I get the 1 minute time, most important thing is what I said at the beginning. Thank you, thank you, thank you for saying screw you to Dave Eggers today. And thank you for coming out here. This is the hometown crowd for me. This is where I started writing. This is where I love coming back to. And anyone who comes out at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and wakes up early, you're my kind of people for books. So please stick. The next writer is my friend Hank, who's coming up. Please stick around. Please stay in this room all day. We have sleeping bags in the back. But thank you for coming here and for supporting the Library of Congress and the National Book Festival. Thanks very much.